So I can't do the cool intros or anything yet because I haven't been doing live streams long enough for whatever reason. Um, so I've just kind of got to dive right on into it. I will be doing some of that cool stuff here soon. Um, I'm getting really annoyed lately. When it comes to game theory, there are a lot of people out there right now. For some reason, this has become a subject that's popping up on Redacted, on Canadian Prepper. Everywhere I look, it's like people want to bring up game theory and they don't understand game theory. They're not even talking about game theory. And so I wanted to try to go ahead and make this simple for everybody. And I haven't done a live stream in a couple of weeks. I want to go ahead and address that too. The Sunday live streams will be going. This has been a process, and for the first few weeks, I couldn't do live streams for the longest, and then I finally was able to. And I've been figuring it out for a few weeks and trying to get moderators, trying to get guests, trying to get everything rolling. It is a process, and I am a one-man army on all of this. So the past couple of weeks, I've had some personal things I've had to do. Another death in the family, which I'm not even. I'm not going to keep getting into these things, but I am still focused on this as far as the live streams go and doing a weekly thing where I'm out every week. It's just there's been a lot going on. So I wanted to go ahead and do this. And as I said before, I'm going to do random videos throughout the week, but I haven't started doing many of them yet. This is a great start to that because this is an issue that has been under my skin for a little bit now. When it comes to game theory and Nash's equilibrium, this is all stuff that I study. It is equilibrium work is all related to the Toe equation. Equilibrium work applies with chemistry, biology, etc. And you have thermodynamic laws on equilibrium with the zeroth law, the second law, etc. How they apply, how they function. Equilibrium work is very much in my wheelhouse. And when it comes to Nash's equilibrium, game theory, all these different things, you're dealing with separate principles that are generated, separate results that are generated with the same principles at play. When it comes to where the root is, where it started, game theory started as a contrast or as a counter to oligopoly. It's economics. That's where it began. And so you have to understand that root if you want to understand how game theory actually applies everywhere else. And it's very important as far as politics, all of it. With the economics, what happened was up until Nash came around, the pretense was that the greatest desired result is achieved when everyone does what's best for the group. Now, in economics, this meant people playing the game cutthroat. They're trying to take out all the competition. They want all the money, okay? What Nash did was he proved, and this actually countered communism at the time. And this is what led into his schizophrenia as far as working with the federal government and all the craziness. Hey, what's going on, everybody? I appreciate you joining. So what he did was, his principle was that a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. That's what he proved with math. And that the greatest desired group result is achieved when the individual components are at their maximum potential. So you have to maximize the individual components first if you want to maximize the potential of the group. As applied to economics and what he was challenging with oligopoly, this is what led to Coke and Pepsi. Okay, you want to understand Nash's equilibrium and why everything is the way that it is. Bloods and Crips are red and blue. Coke and Pepsi are red and blue. Democrats and Republicans are red and blue. Every war game you ever play is red and blue. Okay, let me see here. Apparently the chat is going crazy with this. So every war game, all of it is red and blue. They use this. They use this as an easy dichotomy. It's easily understood by everybody. Sorry, I've got to do my own moderation here as well, guys. It is. I am drunk. Good Lord. Okay. For whatever reason, you all can just block the chat yourselves right now. So when it comes to game theory, what he did was he set up the premise for Coke and Pepsi. The reason for this is what they found out, and what's proven with mathematics, is that if Coke operates by itself and Pepsi operates by itself, they might make $100 alone each, okay? But if they compete with each other, that they can make 300, 400, 1,000 more, etc. The sky is the limit. A greater than sum is generated from the competition. Okay. Now, what people fail at in understanding this is they think one side is trying to beat the other. They are not. This is the entire premise of the uniparty in politics. One side is not trying to defeat the other, because if Coke and Pepsi compete, they will make more money than if they do not compete. Okay. And so when you get into politics, if Democrats and Republicans stop competing, they take less money. In this case, it's less votes. So they have to have that false competition in order to generate a greater percentage of the voting pool. And so when it comes to economics, this is applied through Coke and Pepsi. When it comes to politics, it's applied through Democrats and Republicans, and it's all red and blue, the same format. What they do is, in politics, they shut out the third parties. Okay, this is what actually occurs, and we'll get into how this applies to war and all the fun stuff here in a minute. When it gets into politics, they are shutting out the third parties and destroying this equilibrium. Okay, without third systems, you collapse. The balance is lost. So yes and no require maybe. A proton and a neutron require an electron. If a dichotomy exists, a third option exists, and thus the equilibrium. And so when you get into politics or economics, in economics, it's fair competition. The other companies are why there is fair competition. They keep this dichotomy in check. When you look at our government, there's 3 branches of government to keep these things in check. And so there's always an equilibrium of these 3 things at play. When you look at politics, they're constantly trying to crush the third parties. This is game theory, Nash's equilibrium. This is what they're doing. They try to force competition so that Democrats will defend Republicans against third parties, and Republicans will defend the Democrats against third parties. And I'll give you an example, and this is the perfect example of the problem. D. Riley, Gatewood Galbraith. I don't know if any of you all know those names. I was involved in about a dozen different political campaigns through the years, and I'm not going to sit here and name drop all day. But Gatewood Galbraith was one of them. He was a legalized weed candidate. He was the guy that ran for governor like 12, 13 times. He was the independent guy. Gatewood Galbraith, The Last Free Man in America Meets the Synthetic Subversion is the name of his book. He passed away after the last election that he ran. But I bring this up for a reason. Dee Riley, she's in Northern Kentucky, and we've butted heads numerous times. I gave her credit where it was due back in the day, but now I've reached a certain point that this needs to be addressed. She was in the independent party. She moves over to the Republican side after Gatewood dies. She then starts to attack the third parties. Okay? She was a champion for the independents. She was on Gatewood's side. She was on Real Time with Bill Maher speaking about this man during the campaign. And she was supposedly a staunch advocate for third parties. Now, I'm a registered Republican. I will defend third parties to the death of me. I don't care. I want them there. I want both parties in check. I want there to be balance. In a real, true, maximum potential equilibrium type world with game theory, you'd want 33% Democrat, 33% Republican, and 33% in the middle, just to keep everything in balance, to keep everybody in check. With Dee Riley, what happened was, when she moved over to the Republican side and decided to go after third parties, what she did was she catered to this dichotomy logic. She catered to this stuff and ends up becoming a part of the problem. Okay. And this is what happens in politics with game theory. Everybody ends up becoming a part of the problem, getting pushed to the extremes away from the middle. What I try to do as a person is to divert to the middle and avoid the extremes. And this is to try to maintain the balance and not become an extremist. And it doesn't matter if I'm registered Republican, I'm still in the middle. I'm a libertarian conservative. And so this problem with game theory and the problem with the two-party politics is simple. During that campaign between Matt Bevin and Andy Beshear, Um, Something interesting happened. I was originally going to run for office on the Libertarian ticket. I'd talked to Ken Moman at the time, and we butted heads, but I love him to death. It's fine. I talked to Ken Moman, and he was going to try to back me and help me out. But I told him, I said, if y'all don't have the money and you can't back a candidate, I'm going to stay on the Republican side. And so I did, and I was going to try to primary Matt Bevin. Well, in this election, I could not stand Matt Bevin. It was his second run. Um, what happens is there's this great divide, and it's right before the COVID era, and there's this great divide, and all of a sudden the Republicans are having infighting because they don't like Matt Bevin, a lot of them, and they're selling Bashir as a teacher on the Democrat side, and so a lot of people ended up voting third party, like myself. I voted for John Hicks. I was going to run as a libertarian. I did not like Matt Bevin. I did not like Andy Bashir. I still don't. And I'd like to think that people will admit that I was right about Matt Bevin now. I'd like to think that people will admit that I was right about Matt Bevin now. But aside from that, after the election, what happens? Dee Riley goes just ape shit on the third parties. And she does worse. She says that the Republicans that voted for a libertarian candidate were the reason why Matt Bevin lost, because 10,000 plus voted for voted for John Hicks instead of Matt Bevin. 20,000 plus Republicans voted for Democrat Andy Bashir. You don't get to blame the Republicans that voted third party candidate. There were twice as many Republicans that voted for the Democrat because of how terrible Matt Bevin was. And yet, because she put that R on her shirt, she started attacking third parties. Dee Riley, if you can't admit that you were wrong on that, you might as well go to Gatewood Galbraith's grave and spit on it, because that's what you're doing. That is the problem with Nash's equilibrium when it is applied to certain things without context, is everything gets forced into this extreme dichotomy format, and they try to destroy the third option so that they can maintain control, like Coke and Pepsi, Democrat, Republican. It's the Bloods and the Crips, it's gangs. It is just dichotomy logic. And when you apply to war, when you look at things on the global scale, you see the same thing with Russia, the United States, and China. Okay? There's two top dogs and a third one. And whoever's in the second and third spot is constantly fighting. And in this case, that would be China and Russia for years, to be the opposition to America. Okay? Dichotomy logic, game theory, all of this stuff, how it plays, a greater than sum is generated. Competition generates greater than sums. China wants to be our competition. America wants China to be our competition. If they get too weak, we get weak. If we get too strong and take them out, we don't have any competition. We then get weak. It's all game theory. That's how they're applying this stuff. And so the principles at play here, the actual scientific principles, are simple. That is that a greater than sum is generated when the equilibrium, when this competition takes place. That as long as they compete, they will make more. That can be money, that can be votes, that can be fame, that can be power. So to give you another real world example, if I wanted to, people will say I'm trying to pick fights online with some of the stuff that I've done, which I'm not. But if I wanted to, I would try to mark someone specifically, stick with them, treat them like my nemesis, like my mortal enemy, and say, oh man, I can't stand, oh man, they hate me, this, that, and the other, and try to target them so that they're my opposition. So, somebody that's doing better than me. Okay. And even better if you stage it beforehand. Okay. If you want to know how this works, even better if you can talk about it with them beforehand and say, hey, I'm Coke, you're Pepsi. If I'm competing with you, we'll drive a bunch of hype and a bunch of drama, and that'll generate a bunch of chaos, right? Now, imagine that Jonathan Nash was a schizophrenic. It's why he was unable to not only understand his work the way that it was, but also why the work had such negative impacts on his psyche, because he was a schizophrenic. He could get lost in the chaos, So when you look at game theory applied, I'm going to address this too, with that Chinese guy that was on Redacted. And that is how he will be dubbed, the Chinese guy that was on Redacted this past week. He was there to talk about game theory, right? But he wasn't actually talking about game theory much. He was talking about why America sucks and why we don't like America. That was what that Chinese guy on Redacted was actually discussing. So his name is Professor Blank. I'm not even giving you his name. If you follow Redacted, then go watch it. But this guy is on there to talk about game theory, and he tells you outright, basically, I've got kids, and I'm not allowed to criticize the government. I'm not allowed to criticize the Chinese government. He makes a thing of it in the beginning. And Redacted, they're sitting there, the hosts are sitting there the whole time like, lie to us. We'll take it seriously. Everybody knows that it was propaganda. Okay, so when it comes to Chinese data coming out at all anywhere, you all need to understand this. CNN has live streams that get cut in China, just like every other network, that will get cut in China when they criticize the Chinese government. So the day before that Chinese professor was on Redacted, okay, CNN was doing a story on China. And when they criticized the Chinese government cut CNN's live stream. Now you'll notice that during Redacted's interview with that Chinese guy in China, that professor, he never got cut off. He never criticized the Chinese government. He never said anything negative about them, and he never got cut off. They never cut the signal there. They will cut CNN's feed. They let that guy speak because he was not there to talk about game theory. He was there to talk about how can we use game theory to criticize the United States for the Chinese government. Okay, and I'm going to say this too, to the lady, and Miss, I'm not trying to be rude, but I can't remember your names off the top of my head right at the moment. To the lady co-host, you referred to it as his game theory about 4 times. It wasn't his. It belongs to Jonathan Nash. Shut up. Shut up. Stop repeating it. It's not his game theory. You were lending credence to a Chinese propagandist who is now going to go home and have the Chinese saying, oh, yeah, his game theory. Who's that Jonathan Nash guy? Okay. It is not his game theory. He knows whatever he knows of it. He was only allowed to discuss it to criticize the United States government. And I'm going to say this, whether it's Colonel Douglas McGregor or Scott Ritter, I like some of the things they say. I know that they're propagandists. It doesn't matter to me because I'm immune to propaganda at this point. I like some of the things they say. But here's the problem. When it comes to Redacted, Scott Ritter, sexual assault, did you all forget about the sexual assault and the minors that Scott Ritter was trying to have sex with? So Redacted comes out and complains about the Epstein files, but then they platform Scott Ritter about 30 times at this point. That's a problem for me. That is a problem for me. I want to respect them. I want to treat them with respect. But they keep bringing on these guys, and the one combining factor between the guests on the show is they criticize the U.S. government, the U.S. military, and talk about how China could whoop our ass. If you're bringing on Douglas McGregor, Scott Ritter, and a Chinese professor to talk about game theory, and all that they have to say is that America's government sucks, America's military is weak, we can't take anybody. I'm against a lot of the stuff that's happening right now, but let's clear this up. We kidnapped a Venezuelan president in the middle of the night just because we could. FAFO. Everybody in America wants that drama. Bring it. We don't care. That doesn't mean I support war. It means that I am not going to sit here and cow down to a bunch of propaganda telling me that China could whoop my ass and they're advancing beyond us and they're doing so much better than us. They're broke. They spread the COVID virus. You remember Wuhan? Okay, I'm not going to sit here and cater to China and their BS. So that professor that was on Redacted, he wasn't even talking about game theory. He wasn't talking about Coke and Pepsi. He wasn't talking about how it had roots in oligopoly and economics. He's not talking about how an equilibrium works and how to generate a greater than sum. He's not explaining how it actually applies to politics or war or any of this stuff. So here's a freebie for you when it comes to game theory applied to war, and this is important. You might want to hear this. The maximum potential of war is total destruction. Game theory is about maximizing potential. Let that resonate. The maximum potential of war is total destruction. And game theory is about maximizing potential. You don't want Nash's equilibrium in war. Put it to you this way: if you're going to apply game theory to war, what you actually want to do is try to avoid the maximum potential. You want to avoid the war, but that's not what's happening. The way that they're applying it is they're creating a generation of schizophrenics. This is why I wrote a chapter on this. Should I open it? Should you open it? I have no idea, buddy. More power to you if you think so. So when it comes to Nash's equilibrium applied to war, you don't want the maximum potential. You want to avoid it. But here are the problems. Okay, this is why you cannot just use Nash's or game theory applied to war. You just can't throw it at it without any context. You think the more information you have, the better off you are. Congratulations, step one to being a schizophrenic. You trust no one. You want all of the data. So you're going to spy. And you're going to spy on everybody. And now they're going to spy on you. You have started step one of the self-fulfilling prophecy. This is why Jonathan Nash went nuts, okay? The moment that you start there and you say that I have to have all the data, okay? I'm a really smart man. I'm putting out books on the theory of everything, okay? I get it. I don't know everything. I don't want to know everything. I'd look like the Riddler on Batman Forever going nuts and drooling on myself. You can't handle it. We are not gods, okay? And so when it comes to game theory, what they did is they've ended up creating a schizophrenic application of it. So you say, I have to have all the information in order to make the best decision. And you can never have all of the information. Things happen naturally. So you tell yourself, okay, they think, this country over here thinks that the best thing for them is to do this. That's what's best for them. But wait, they might have a different opinion of what they think is best for them. Okay, that's how crazy it is to try to apply game theory without finite data, without tangible finite data. Is when you look to another nation and you say they're going to do what's best for them. Well, what's best for them? Is that your opinion, or is that their opinion, or is that somebody else's opinion that's controlling them and puppeting them that you don't even know about? You're telling yourself that everybody's going to do what's best for themselves at that point. Because again, game theory, the way that it works is everybody doing what's best for themselves and then the group. So you think that everybody's going to think that way. Everybody doesn't think that way. Some people are chill. So like some people don't want that stuff. They're not going to actively try to do what's best for themselves. Let's put this into context, people. You live in America, okay? I will defend America to the hilt, but there's a reason why we have an obesity problem. People not wanting to do things. They're not doing what's best for themselves. People don't always do what's best for themselves. Game theory relies on people not only knowing what is best for themselves, but then choosing to do what is best for themselves. It's flawed from jump. You can't do it. So you end up trying to get all this data and trying to make things fit in little boxes so that you can control the data and say, okay, this is definitely this is definitely that. We're done. But it's all in evolution. It's all in motion. So now you run into another problem, okay? They know what's best for themselves. Say it's Russia, China, Ukraine, Israel. Does not matter. They know what's best for themselves. It's been determined. It's universally just accepted now that they know what is best for themselves. Okay. After they know what's best for themselves, they have now chosen to do what is best for themselves. Okay, gotcha. Check. Step 3. The king's wife cheats on him, and now he's fucked up in the head, so he's not doing the right thing. Game theory ruined. Game theory ruined. A guy's wife cheats on him, and it ruins the game because he's not going to make the right decisions. Or maybe his wife got killed, or maybe his kid didn't get into college and got busted with drugs, and he's not thinking clearly. Game theory relies on complete and total fucking rationality in an irrational world, which is why people go nuts trying to use it improperly. Okay? I can understand this stuff for a reason. I didn't drive myself nuts trying to... I can learn everything. You just slow down. Deal with data as it comes to you. And so when you end up with game theory applied to war in the Middle East, and it doesn't matter where you're at, you are leading to a maximum potential. And in war, it is total destruction. You create schizophrenia, you create unrest, you create paranoia. And it starts with trying to get information from everywhere that they're not going to give you. And so you got to spy, and then they spy on you. And then that escalates. And at the same time, you're dependent on people knowing what's best for themselves and doing what's best for themselves, and nothing in their life going wrong and impacting their decision making. You people don't understand game theory. Like everybody talking about, I've got Canadian prepper on my feed going, I've talked about game theory before. Yes, terribly. Please stop. Please, for everybody's sake, stop talking about game theory. Like, I will buy something from the prepper store if you promise to never mention game theory again. I mean it, Nate. I mean it. And with Redacted, if you don't understand things, that's fine. But your go-to guest for game theory should not be some Chinaman who's only allowed to talk about it in China so long as he's talking crap about the American government and how we're going to lose the wars. Okay? When I hear a rational, logical, middle ground person make a claim, I think, all right, I'll hear you out. When I hear a Chinese professor there to talk about game theory on Redacted for an hour, and all I hear is, well, yeah, that's why America sucks, and the American military is falling apart, and the American economy is going to hell, and China, I mean, we're just doing great, you know? That was obvious. It was such obvious. It made my skin crawl. Like, it's part of the reason why I'm doing this video. He wasn't even talking about game theory. 90% of the people coming out saying, bringing it up, they're not explaining it. And so if you want to know how game theory works, that this video should be a good summary of this. Equilibriums generate greater than sums. Game theory is just Coke and Pepsi. And economics applied to politics, applied to war, applied to whatever. It is false competition, fake competition a lot of the time to drive greater results. And so in the case of economics, you get more money. In the case of politics, you get more votes. In the case of war, you get more death and destruction. Now, if you think I'm wrong about any of this, I want you to understand something. They are using game theory to generate more money in economics because they know that's how it works. They are using game theory to generate more votes for the Democrats and Republicans in politics because they know that's how it works. Now tell me that they are using game theory applied to war, but they don't know it's going to cause more destruction. You see what it does in every other field where it is applied. It generates more. Greater than sums generated from the equal. They're going to create more destruction when they apply game theory to war. It is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Game theory only works with 100% true, accurate data. Every external factor that plays a role on it destroys the game like a cheat code on an old Nintendo with Game Genie. Guy cheats on his wife. Congratulations, all rationality out the window. He's not going to follow the rules of the game. It's just, this is Nash's equilibrium. This is game theory. This is how these things function. So if anybody actually wants to have a conversation with me about this, bring me on a podcast, talk to me about any of this stuff so that I can properly explain it, I would love to do so. But just do me one courtesy. Tell Nate to knock off his ego. Every time you watch Canadian Prepper, just remind him, nobody cares about your stupid ego. Shut up about game theory. Otherwise, he's a great guy. And just please stop talking about game theory if you don't understand game theory. And a lot of you don't. You just like name dropping and bringing it up. So here's another one for you. I talked to you about separating people from their work. Jonathan Nash was a garbage human being. I don't care about his schizophrenia. He abandoned the woman in the movie A Beautiful Mind with Russell Crowe. He abandoned that woman and the kid. He had another kid later with another woman. Do you know what he told them? He said that she was beneath his standing. She was just a bar hoe to him. And they glorified him in a Hollywood movie. No. Jonathan Nash was trash. Russell Crowe is awesome though. But Jonathan Nash was trash as a person. He did great work. And it was also fueling his schizophrenia. And so just study these things before you talk about them. Do your research. This is this is 101 game theory. But anyway, tomorrow I'm planning on doing a science stream again. 7 o'clock. Plan on that's roughly where I'm doing them. But every Sunday, 7 o'clock, we'll do a science stream. I'm going to keep this stuff rolling now that I'm through with funerals and gardening and whatever else I've had going over the past couple of weeks. So every Sunday, 7 o'clock. Do you have an idea for a guest? Send them my way. My email should be on my YouTube. I'll set up contacts and all that stuff in the videos later. But definitely get in touch. Leave me feedback, whatever you want to talk about, whatever random science stuff, politics. It doesn't really matter. Just please interact with the data, study the things that I'm putting out, educate yourselves as much as possible. It is the most important thing to me is that people are educated. If otherwise, I'm just wasting my breath. I don't like talking to myself. I'm not making any money off this, guys. This is not monetized. I don't want to monetize it. I don't care. I'm not going to leave you a way to leave me money. I just want to educate you on things. So take care. I think I'm going to call that a wrap for tonight. Because it is getting a little bit late. But tomorrow at 7 at the latest, and we will talk about all kinds of science randomness. I do have a couple guests set up. I don't know if they're going to make it tomorrow, but if they don't, then I will be solo, and that is fine. So I'll see y'all then.